What's up, everybody? It's LG Doucette here. You're listening to The First Mint, a podcast where I talk about NFTs in the world of Web3. The podcast comes out every Monday morning and occasionally on Wednesdays. If you like this content and you want some more, feel free to visit our Twitter page at The First Mint. Well, we really thought that 2022 was going to be the year. After 2021, where a lot of people, including a lot of you guys, heard the term NFT for the first time, NFTs burst out of the gate at the start of the year in 2022 with like a record-setting month in January. If you guys can rewind 5 months back to January of this year, there was like $5 billion in sales on OpenSea, which was like a third of all of 2021. It was like at the start of the year, we were like, man, 2021 was crazy, but 2022 is going to be the year. But if you're listening to this anytime around June 12th or 13th, because I'm recording this on Sunday night, June 12th, 2022, you now know, or at least assume, that 2022 is going to be marked as the year of the first NFT bear market. And it's a bear market for everything else. It's not just NFTs, but it is going to be this NFT community's first bear market, or maybe even worse, merely the start of its first bear market. For reasons like far beyond the control of the NFT industry and of crypto, honestly, this is happening. Things are crashing right now. They've been crashing for 6 weeks, and it's even worse as of the recording of this podcast. But instead of talking about that, about the doom and gloom, which you're going to read about everywhere else today in this week, I want to skip forward a couple of years. I want to be a little bit more productive. Look into the future beyond this bear market, beyond the inflation rates, beyond the Fed regulating things and all these in Canada as well, beyond our current understanding of what NFTs are and what they can do. There's going to be a wave of adoption soon. We don't know when, we don't know how, but we do know, and many of us, us NFT maxis, we hope that one day we're going to welcome not just millions, but billions of people into NFTs. To pick an arbitrary number, let's say 100 million. And today's episode is going to focus on those next 100 million people that are going to come into NFTs and how, when, and why that they do it. This is The First Mint. Real quick today, before we get into it, I know it is going to be a hard week for a lot of people, but I do want to give you guys a quick little preview about what is coming up this week and in the next couple of weeks at The First Mint. So really short term in terms of live show, we've rebooted our live show. It's Wednesday nights at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube. We have a lot of fun. We're bringing on some great guests. And this week we have Zvi from Pixel Vault, who is the new head of Pixel Vault Sports. If you know Pixel Vault, they have Punks Comics, they have Meta Heroes, they have Planets, they have a wonderful ecosystem. We like to talk about them on The First Mint. We're big fans, big holders of The First Mint. And we're going to have their new, basically, head of sports partnerships on the live show to come hang out with Phil and I, chat sports, chat crypto, chat about his experience and what he is planning at Pixel Vault along with G-Funk and the team. The following week, we're going to be at NFT NYC or whatever is left of it. There will be no live show, but we will be back for the last week of June, right back to have some fun on the live show with Phil D. The next 2 Mondays, today is Monday, June 13th, if you're listening to this when it comes out. The next 2 Mondays, we have 2 really interesting interviews that we're actually recording this week and will be airing. First, we're going to have Jamie, who is the new general manager of NBA Top Shot. We're going to be chatting with her this week and putting that out next Monday, June 20th. And then the week after that, we're going to have an interview with Safa and Valet Jones from Jenkins the Valet to talk about the bigger picture of intellectual property in NFTs and talk about what that's going to look like, as well as how that kind of wraps into their project. Because as you know, they're if you may know, Jenkins the Valet is building tons of really exciting media properties. So the next couple weeks going to be more interview based on the show, and there will still be a written component. If you don't know, we started doing a written component with these shows. It's on a new site. It's on a Substack that we've been using, thefirstmint.substack.com. Eventually, that'll just be thefirstmint.com. We're kind of in the middle of a long, slow migration from our current content ecosystem, which is a little bit scattered, over to Substack. So our new site is going to encompass pretty much everything we do. It's going to have our newsletter that goes to Greg Oden. Zach writes 3 times a week about NBA Top Shot. And it's also going to have this podcast, and it's also going to have our live show, and maybe, just maybe over time, a few other exciting things that are coming out. We'll make a big announcement about that full shift to that. But just so you guys know, if you're listening to this, there's also a written version of it on thefirstmint.substack.com. So, moving on to the topic of the day. Amidst this total market turmoil, the next 100,000, 100 million even people that are going to come into NFTs. Now, when I first started looking at crypto in a more serious way, which is just over 2 years ago now, I went in there looking for practical use cases. I knew the technology was exciting, but I needed to know like how and why this could actually impact people's day-to-day lives. Like I knew there was potential, but I hadn't really found it yet. And despite all this DeFi stuff, Bitcoin stuff, like that just wasn't doing it for me. I was like, it can't just be like new farming yields that are going to be interesting for normal people. Like that is not what's going to work. And then one day I found NFTs, and honestly, the rest is history. And the day I found NFTs, I kind of developed my own little motto. Like I was like, I finally found something that I think is really going to stick, that I think is going to make really crypto really exciting. And I developed my own personal little mission statement, which is crypto is for everybody. NFTs to me were a signal that in the crypto environment, there was the potential for applications like NFTs that would then become something that normal people could use, whether it was collectibles, gaming, tickets, authenticity, proof. I saw that like the core values of crypto could birth exciting stuff like that. And I was all in. A lot like the internet, which does now boast like a practical use case for a lot of people, for pretty much everybody on the planet, which for a long time the internet didn't. Like back in the 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't really a way for everybody to use the internet, but now there is something for everybody. I really think that crypto is going to be in every household, and I think that NFTs are going to lead the way there. And I think that NFTs are going to be a very big part of that. Despite this most recent NFT bull run, the fact is that a lot of people in the world don't own NFTs. Like very few of them actually do. And even fewer of them have actual use for them. Some people might have a couple NFTs here and there, but they don't really know what to do with them. When I originally set out to kind of write this essay slash podcast slash article, I really wanted to write it about large IPs. We work with a lot of brands, and I wanted to talk about different sports and how they were going to be the gateway, just like they were for Top Shot, for a lot of people to come in. But as I started researching and thinking and kind of taking notes, I realized that it's really going to be technology, but also a byproduct of technology that is going to bring those 100 million people in. Networks. I think that the adoption of NFTs through crypto is going to be driven by networks, the tokenization of networks, the quantifying of networks, the new frontier of networks, the collective power of networks. So in today's show, we're going to explore how networks can, could, and will drive 100 million new people into NFTs. We're going to start with that target, 100 million. It sounds like a moonshot. Honestly, it sounds ridiculous. Like, and even 2 years ago, thinking about there being 10,000 people in NFTs was ridiculous. There weren't that many people. But now, we'll get to the numbers in a minute. There's a lot more than that. And for the purpose of this kind of essay, we're going to use 100 million as kind of like a target, because it'll be a lot easier to make like irresponsible predictions and suggestions and recommendations for how we're going to get there with kind of a bigger, juicier number. It's more of a moonshot, and thus it kind of gives me and gives us a bigger platform to come up with bigger and crazier ideas. And I think that I'll say right away before we get to, I have some cold hard numbers for you guys. I'll tell you that right now. Before we get to those, I really think that getting to 100 million people owning NFTs is going to require a dramatically different reimagining, like a total new approach to our current state of being, to how we currently see NFTs. And I think that this market is going to shake out a lot of that and create that next wave, or at least create the ideas of the next wave. Before we get into some of the ideas and the ways we think we're going to get to 100 million people, let's look at some of the actual data. And I'm just going to read these numbers to you kind of in order of size. So the total crypto market cap, as of a couple hours ago, which by the time I'm recording this is probably a little bit different because Sunday night things are not going well in the crypto market, is $1.1 trillion. The NFT market cap is $12 billion. So just over 1% of the crypto picture. Think about that. That NFTs are still, in terms of volume, in terms of money, in terms of value, are still just 1% of the rest of crypto. Very small. Coinbase claims that they have 98 million verified wallets on their platform. So close to our number, but that's just people sign up for Coinbase, not necessarily people have NFTs. MetaMask, probably the most popular NFT wallet, has 21 million monthly active users. Axie Infinity is the most traded and owned game in terms of individuals or individual wallets. It has 2.4 million individual traders. OpenSea has 1.8 million individual traders. But there's also a report in the Financial Times from, I think, the end of last year that said that there are only 360,000 total NFT owners, which is kind of a skew in numbers. It's hard to find the right numbers. This is a very new industry, so it's hard to find what's right. 360,000 seems really low compared to 1.8 million traders on OpenSea and 2.4 on Axie Infinity. However, I will say in terms of like looking around the NFT community, 360,000 actually seems pretty active or pretty accurate in terms of like how many people might actually be active. So let's use that as our basis for today. Let's just use that. Let's just say whether there are more NFT owners than that. Let's just say it's 360,000, which is 0.36% of our goal of 100 million. It's 0.0045% of the world's population, or in other terms, 1 in 22,222 people that have an NFT right now. So one person in like an NBA stadium. What else has 100 million people? Right? What else? What other tech platforms or tech products have 100 million people that we can maybe compare that for size? Because I've never looked at 100 million people. I don't know what that looks like. I can't really fathom that. Twitch, video game streaming software, I guess, has and social network has 140 million active users per month. Nintendo, video game company, claims that they have 100 million people playing annually on their platforms. Apple News, which you have an iPhone, you definitely have Apple News kind of forced on you a little bit, has 100 million monthly active users. Google Meet, formerly Google Hangouts, which I use almost every day, has 100 million daily active participants. And Strava, which I also use a couple times a week, which you use to record your running or your biking or whatever, also claims to have 100 million users, although I didn't find the actual like frequency of how often they're on there, but they just say 100 million accounts. And you look at that list, these are tech products. It's not really a fair comparison, right? Because NFTs they're not like a tech product. They're like a cultural platform, kind of like these, but they're also a technology in themselves. So comparing them to tech products isn't really right. So I'm also going to compare them to like the adoption rates of other technological shifts, things like iPhones, smartphones, radios, and all that kind of stuff. And if you look at the blog post, I've got a really great kind of like chart of this, so you have to go check it out as well. But basically, the chart shows the adoption rate in the last 100 years in the US of radio, cell phones, cars, computers, smartphones, tablets, and landlines. And basically, the conclusion of that chart, which you can probably imagine, is that the household adoption of things like landlines and radios is relatively slow. The radio was quite fast at first in terms of getting to like 80%. It only took it about maybe 15 years. Whereas things like tablets, cell phones, and especially smartphones, their adoption rate of going from like 10% to like 70% of households in the US is like literally just a few years. Right. So the conclusion from that, and it's hard to find comparable data for like how fast NFTs will grow compared to other tech things. This is kind of as close as we can get for now. Basically, the conclusion there is that, technology now scales a lot faster. And we knew that. And companies scale faster as well. So if NFTs, which in most cases probably won't require an actually new piece of hardware like a phone or a tablet, they're already going to have that hardware in place. So it's really just a matter of there being apps like the other ones mentioned that can scale to 100 million users, let's say, or a combination of apps that can all accumulate to 100 million. So thinking that we have our number of 360,000 that we're using as our base right now, and we're trying to get that to 100 million. That's only 277 times the current user base, which is a lot. But when you think about it in the rate of tech adoption, like cell phones and things like Strava, sure, it's not crazy to think that it could scale to that level given the right applications. So before we get into those applications, let's actually look at the barriers to adoption. That's the biggest thing, right? Like we all love NFTs. We all know about all this cool stuff that they could be, but we also know that for a lot of us, it was really hard to get into NFTs and to actually own some NFTs. So let's look at, kind of the three main questions that are barriers for people getting NFTs. The first one being crypto wallets. Now, there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of Web3, Web2 ish companies that are trying to be the first wallet for people when they get into crypto and especially into NFTs. Again, Coinbase has these, 98 million verified users, but that's not how many people own NFTs. And the big questions there, I don't have answers. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of companies, a lot of them saying they're doing different stuff, a lot of different funding in the space. But the big questions there is for those 100 million people, will their first wallets be non-custodial, as in not tied to like a Coinbase or a Dapper or something like that, but literally a MetaMask that you can just kind of like you have your seed phrase and your keys, and you can kind of just port it wherever you want. Nobody can control your wallet. Will those first wallets be on Ethereum, on Solana, on Flow, on a different blockchain that we haven't even heard of yet? And will those wallets be created by choice or out of necessity? I really think that maybe some people might get their first NFT or their first wallet through no choice of their own, right? I think a lot of people were kind of forced into emails like, hey, we're only taking emails. We're only going to communicate by email. So maybe at the end of the 90s, a lot of people had to get their first email address without really wanting to. So it could be that NFTs are issued into people's wallets that they never wanted in the first place, but they have to get because whatever reason necessitates that they get it. Second question is, how are they going to get their first NFT? Right? There's a lot of competition out there. Getting an NFT on Ethereum is complicated, even if for us using OpenSea is easy. And things like OpenSea and Flow and Top Shot, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's a fiat option, there's credit card options. So that on-ramp is easy. But in what context are people going to get that first NFT? Are they going to mint them for free, which has been very popular lately? Are they going to mint their own? Is someone's first NFT going to be something that they create themselves as like a piece of their identity? Or are they gonna, like the point I made about wallets, are they gonna have it issued to them involuntarily? And the third major question is what will be the first use case of the NFTs? This is the most important thing. This is what drives all of technology is what is it doing for me? We didn't use the internet until it made things like collecting information way easier. And we didn't use smartphones until it kind of amalgamated all the apps we had, like cameras and phone books and text communication. So are people not going to use NFTs until what? What are NFTs going to make easier? Is it going to be things like collectibles? Is it going to be gaming, ticketing, gambling, authenticity, proof, all the things I named at the start? Or is it going to be something a little bit deeper than those use cases? If you ever listen to like things like Steve Jobs, his old things, he's always said that a product just needs to work. That's the simplest thing. Somebody opens the phone or the computer and it just works and it's easy. So what is going to be the NFT version of that? And have we really had that? Maybe we had a little bit in Top Shop, but are 100 million people going to collect LeBrons as their first NFT? There's so much competition now. There's so many other things. Who knows what it's going to be? Let's take a shot at that. And this is where we've reached out of this kind of like essay of 100 million people. This is where we've reached the kind of like the more speculative part of everything, right? So take this all with a grain of salt. I know nothing, okay? I really hope we get to 100 million people. I really, really do. And I hope it's sometime soon, but I have no idea how it's going to happen. And I'll also say that we don't really have enough creators in the space. I don't just mean creators like artists and whatever else you call people kind of creating communities. I mean, like, we don't have like architects. We don't have people that are like creative in their disciplines at work, even if it's not, doesn't have the title of creative. Like, there's not a lot of people here like that have looked at their current workplace or the things that they do or their hobbies and thought about how a layer of NFTs and blockchain could improve that. And I also really believe that we're at the point in NFTs right now where there is a world-changing application that is coming that hasn't been thought of yet by some teenager who's literally still in like 10th grade. I think of like social media pre Zuckerberg in the couple years before he got to Harvard and thought of Facebook or stole Facebook's idea or whatever that is. But he was just a kid interested in technology. There's probably a kid out there like that who's going to come up with something amazing that maybe we'll all use. And it's really hard to know what that is. But we'll throw a couple darts at the wall. We'll take a shot. So, first potential mass adoption, road to 100 million, is digital attendance. If you listen to the first minute, you've been around for a while, you know that I love POAPs, which are proof of attendance protocol tokens, basically like a token bound record of events or places that you've been to. Now, imagine you had a POAP outside of just listening to First Mint live shows, which you can get them right now if you tune in Wednesday nights. We give POAPs. Imagine you had a POAP for every single concert or sports game you've ever been to. Every single one in your life. Imagine retroactively, and you could go look at that anytime. Imagine you had a POAP for every birthday party you've been to. Or take it a step further. Imagine you had a POAP every time you went to church. Be very few for me. Or every time you went to school. Or you went to a certain store. Considering that now, like our phones track our movements, like adding a layer of like, hey, here's an NFT every time you go certain places that you opt into for like privacy reasons, doesn't seem that far fetched, right? Like it actually feels like that's a lot closer than we think. Maybe that's something POAP is going to build, and maybe that's something that will be again maybe voluntarily or involuntarily issued to people. But it's something that I'd love a bit of that paper trail, especially ones that I want. So maybe it's just like a simple like badge of attendance that's going to give 100 million people their first NFT. Next possibility, one that I would welcome very much because I do like to have interesting meetings, is a metaverse office. I'd love to have meetings in like Decentraland or Crypto Voxels or the Sandbox. I'd love to do that. Honestly, I would show up every time. But that's also because I actually don't think my personal belief is that I don't think we're going to use those types of places for anything beyond gaming. Yes, I think one of those will be like the Fortnite of blockchain, absolutely. But I don't think we're going to go to like concerts and theater and go hang out with brands in Decentraland. No knock to Decentraland. I just don't see that as a thing. I feel like people have been trying to force virtual reality on us and Oculus Rift and all that kind of shit for decades now. And it's something that people haven't been into. Like a lot of people would argue that we already are in the metaverse, that texting each other all the time, being on Twitter, Discord, all that kind of stuff, that is the metaverse. Trying to get us to do virtual reality has been there for a super long time. And I just don't think that it's a consumer application, but I do think it's a corporate application. I would love to spend all of my Zoom and Google Meets and friggin' WebEx meetings. I'd love to spend those in some kind of hilarious metaverse. Maybe we're all sitting in some kind of exotic location, like on top of a volcano or like in the Grand Canyon. And I've got this hilarious avatar. We all have this like whiteboard we can draw on and stuff like that. And the only way into those, digital boardrooms, meta boardrooms, is through an access granting NFT. Make meetings great again, make video meetings great again by putting them in the metaverse. Third one, diplomas and DMVs. That's what I called them in the blog post. Here's a question for you. How many people graduate high school every year? How many people graduate some kind of college or secondary degree? Recently, Vitalik Buterin, the godfather, the creator of Ethereum, wrote about soulbound tokens, which are NFTs that are sent in a one-way direction to a verified wallet. They're non-transferable, they're non-financial. They just exist as some kind of proof of record. It's the kind of thing, it's the kind of token that could replace diplomas or even driver's licenses, maybe even passports. And even if it didn't replace them at scale, it would definitely make them easier, which is the whole point of better tech and tech adoption. As long as it was safe, it'd have to be safe. We'd have to make sure it actually works. But it'd be a lot better than like the paper bound process. Like I don't even know where my high school diploma is. I don't know where that thing is. It's a piece of paper somewhere. Maybe it's at my mom's house. I don't know. That one would be really hard. All that would be really hard because we'd be going up against decades of like corporate paperwork, political red tape. It's so hard to get these government documents and all that kind of stuff. But can't deny that once it actually worked and was recognized officially, that getting 100 million people to use it, again, maybe against their will, would happen really fast. Now, the last one, in terms of the possibilities of getting us to 100 million people, is the open one, is a very open possibility, but one that I believe in the most. Everything I've listed here, all these applications, they're very nice thoughts, things that people probably are working on already, but they don't really quantify the true value of the internet, which is networks. Much like the rest of crypto, the whole point of NFTs is to connect over shared value, like a value in communities and networks that we don't really like currently quantify or even see as value, like a collective energy, a collective groupthink of processes that we have in real life or that we don't have yet that live online and where we can connect with those people. Something like profile photos, which are often ridiculed, and I've never changed my profile photo. It's still just me. I've never, I own some, but I've never been too deep into it in terms of its like actual application. I do think that PFPs are like the tip of the iceberg to the larger narrative of networks. PFPs are like a surface level signal of belonging and one that is assigned by market value of how much people care about that brand or that PFP. They're proof without reason of doubt that there's a network of individuals that have captured value together exclusively online, something that has never really been done. So, how that manifests next beyond cat and ape photos, I think that part is literally impossible to nail down or to imagine. We never thought that something like Bored Apes could happen. We never thought that something like that could be so potent. Go back a year and a half. I didn't think that was possible. We thought it was only going to be about top shots and metaverse lands and all that kind of stuff. But something like Apes happened, and it's like, wow, just like that, a community with so much conviction basically like spoke a global brand into existence. How could we possibly imagine what the next iteration of that will be since literally not a single person ever saw that coming? Here's a few random stabs at how maybe that can manifest a little later into the future. Perhaps local communities could create their own NFTs to further quantify their cultural nuances. Think about people in your neighborhood, in your town, in your borough. How do you connect with them? How do you form an identity? How do you deal with politics? Can you create that with tokens? Can you leverage that with tokens? Think about large swaths of customers of a certain brand. If they created their own NFTs and formed this kind of like consumer council DAO of people that give feedback and try and work with this like large retailer brand, kind of like stock owners, but more power to the consumer, more quantified power like we have in blockchain where people can vote and it's more immediate and it's more traceable. Or even think about global workers, people that have all the same profession. It's so hard to get certified in different countries, all that kind of stuff. Imagine all those qualifications were on a blockchain on an international level. And those people could kind of form together, band together to not only fully certify their qualifications, but also to connect with each other, talk about opportunities to bring that community together, almost like the Web3 version of a union. Now, time will tell if any of this is actually possible. If we'll ever get to 100 million people, hopefully the dream's not over. If you're listening to this the week of June 13th, it might definitely feel that way. But I think we can get there. And I think we're going to get there with none of the stuff that I just said today. I think it's going to be something totally different. But at least this is a start to thinking a little longer term in NFTs. As usual, I want to hear what you think. Hit me up at LG Doucette on Twitter, at The First Mint on Twitter as well. You can hit me up, or you can go to thefirstmint.substack.com and give us a little comment on the blog post. Once it's up, it might be up a little later in the day. A few people got to look at it for typos and stuff like that first. We're sticking around, folks. So if you're sticking around, we are very happy to have you and to think about this next step alongside with you. And that is going to do it for us today, folks. Join us this Wednesday on the live show, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, the First Mint YouTube. We will see you then.